A note for fellow constipation kids. Chia seeds in water is actually super helpful. It's kind of like, Connor hates it. He thinks it's weird and gross because they're like little gelatinous blobs in your water, but I find it's kind of like bubble tea except less aggressive. Like bubble tea, you drink it through the straw and the bubbles just always like whack me in the back of the throat. Oh, that's gross. Anyways, chia seeds in your water and lemon, good for constipation. Okay, hi, welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in my celiac diagnosis story series. I'll link the first video that I did in the description box if you want to check that one out. That one was about like the cause of celiac disease for me and the symptoms that I experienced. And this video is going to be about getting diagnosed. So I'm going to talk about going to the doctor and going to the doctor again and again and again and again and all the other things that I tried to do to figure out what was wrong with me. I left off my last video talking about how I let my symptoms build up for 2.5 years and I just kind of ignored them for a really long time. And part of the reason I think I did that was because I didn't have a family doctor. So I just didn't want to like deal with figuring out where I would have to go and what I would have to do to like get medical attention. Anyways, it ended up not being that hard. Eventually I found a walk-in clinic and I saw a doctor and gave him my whole list of symptoms, and he had me like lie down on that bed with the weird paper, and he like pushed on my stomach and he was like, does that hurt? And I was like, no. And he was like, yeah, well, you probably are constipated. You might have IBS. I just recommend walks in water. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'll try that. But also I feel unsatisfied. And he was very kindly was like, okay, well, I can refer you to a specialist if you like. What is it called? A gastroenterologist? I always feel like I'm saying that word wrong. It's such a weird word. Gastroenterology. Anyways, so he referred me to a specialist and I was happy with that. So I went away with his advice of walks in water, which like walks in water is good advice. Like he's not wrong. It's just I needed like a little bit more. But anyways, so I went away with that advice and knowing that I was going to be put on a wait list, and I was waiting around for a call, and 6 months later the call still hadn't come. Actually, that call never came. I never got a call for that supposed specialist that I was put on the wait list for. So I don't know what the hell happened there. Like someone dropped the ball somewhere and I wasn't put on the wait list, or it's just a really long list. I don't know. So yeah. 6 months later, I was still waiting and I was getting really desperate and things weren't getting better. The walking in the water wasn't helping. And I was like, I'm gonna take things into my own hands. You know, I'm gonna try something on my own just to like make me feel like I was doing something proactive. So I decided to do an elimination diet. So I went to the store and got my little book on how to do it. And I read the whole damn thing cover to cover. And yeah, set about just going on a really restrictive diet. In the book, they tell you to cut out literally all the food. like they have a little recipe section in the back, and I was just eating this broccoli soup. It was so gross. It was the nastiest shit. Oh my god. Anyways, it looked gross too. It looked like baby poop. It was nasty. Anyways, so I cut out all the things. Like I couldn't have coffee, alcohol, dairy, eggs, gluten, obviously, corn, nightshades, anything that could potentially create inflammation in the body, they made you cut out. And so you cut all that stuff out for 2 weeks. And then the idea is at the end of the 2 weeks, when you're finally like miraculously feeling better, you can add things back in one at a time. And by doing that, you can assess, okay, this food I feel fine eating, but this food gives me reaction. So you know that that's a problem for you. But by the end of the 2 weeks, I was not feeling better. I still felt like total crap. And it was like a miserable 2 weeks too, because I was like missing my coffee and I couldn't have sugar. I was like going through sugar withdrawal. And then to go through all that and then at the end of the 2 weeks still feels so shitty. I was just like, what the hell? like, god damn it. And so in the book, what they say is if you still don't feel better, just keep going with this really restrictive diet until you do feel better, and then you can add things back in. And I was like, so you're telling me that I just have to eat like this forever until I start feeling good? I was just like, no more of this. I'm done. So that little 2-week experiment really prompted me to go see another doctor, which thank God I did, because this doctor, he was the one, he was the guy. So I went to a completely different walk-in clinic and found a doctor who agreed to take me on as a patient. So obviously, since he wasn't technically my family doctor, I had to pay for that service, but so worth it. I gave him my whole list of symptoms and I was like, am I dying? Like, is this normal? And he was like, no, it's not normal, but don't freak out. We're gonna figure it out. And he was super chill, but he was like, unfortunately, the list of symptoms you have could be a lot of different things. So we're just gonna have to send you for tests and cross things off the list. So I'm gonna send you for tests, and if they come back fine, we're gonna send you for more. And we're just gonna keep going like that until we hit on something that indicates what's wrong with you. Yeah, he prepared me that it was gonna be potentially a very long process, but I was like, okay, I just feel good that we're at least moving forward. So he sent me for the first round of tests, came back, everything was fine. Sent me for the second round of tests, and in that second round, I asked to have a food sensitivity test done. And he was like, you don't really need that. It's really expensive. You have to pay for it yourself. And I was like, well, paying to see you. I pushed for it, basically. I was like, I really want this. And he was like, yeah, if you are willing to pay for it, it is useful information to have. So I went for the second round of tests. And in that second round was this celiac blood panel. Obviously, that got a result, and he called me in to talk about it. And I walk into his office and he's like, congratulations, you have celiac disease. I was like, what? But he was just so happy for me that we had figured out what was wrong, that he was like, I'm a pretty good doctor. I figured it out. Yeah, he was just like, your results are so obvious. Your blood work is just off the charts insane. You obviously have celiac disease. That's what's wrong with you. Congratulations. It was just such a weird experience for him to keep saying congratulations and being so happy for me that we had figured it out, when I was like, I don't even know what this word is and I don't know what this means. But he explained to me, you can't eat gluten ever again. That's basically it. Just don't eat gluten, you'll feel better. And then he also gave me the food sensitivity test results, and that was this huge long list of random stuff. But at the very top of the list was dairy, eggs, and corn. So with the food sensitivity panel, those aren't, obviously they're not allergies. It's just stuff that you're sensitive to. So the idea is you cut them out, and then once you're feeling better and your body is back up and running, you can add those things back in. So I've been able to add back in all the other things that were on that list, except dairy, eggs, and corn. So those 3 things I'm still sensitive to today. But yeah, I got so distracted by the food sensitivity results because I saw dairy at the top of that list, and I was just like, I can't have cheese? Are you kidding me? And he was like, yeah, but it's okay. You can add it back in. And he explained the whole how the adding back in thing works. And I was just like, but I can't eat cheese. Cheese is my favorite food. I love that shit. I will eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I used to go to work and have coffee and cheese curds for breakfast. I love cheese. It's good on everything. It's good on bread. It's good on pasta. It's good in desserts like cheesecake. Who invented it? It's so good. Anyways, so I was really just ignored the news of me having celiac disease and never being able to eat gluten, and got so wrapped up in the dairy thing that I went to my car and literally cried because I couldn't eat cheese. I'm a dramatic person. Anyways, so yeah, that was basically it. That was basically the whole appointment. He didn't tell me anything really other than don't eat gluten, you'll feel better, and here are some things that you're sensitive to. That was it. He didn't tell me celiac disease was hereditary or that it damages the small intestine, that it's an autoimmune disease, and crucially, he did not mention that I should get a biopsy. He didn't tell me that the biopsy is the gold standard for confirming that you have celiac disease. So basically, the blood panel is only the first step in getting diagnosed. So you get the blood panel done, and then if that comes back positive, then you go for a biopsy so they can like put a camera down and go in there and look around and actually see the damage that gluten is doing to your small intestine. And by seeing that damage, that's like apparently the best way that they can confirm that that's what's wrong with you. So he didn't mention that at all. So I was just like, well, I guess I don't need it. Obviously, I went home after that appointment, and the first thing I did was Google celiac disease and noticed that the biopsy thing was, you know, a thing. But I was just like, well, I don't know. Like, I trust the professional who diagnosed me, and he seemed pretty convinced by my blood tests, so I guess it's fine. And I just kind of didn't think anything of it. And I knew that I was feeling so crappy that I just wanted to cut gluten out then and there. I was like, if that is what it takes for me to start feeling good, I'm done with this. So I cut gluten out that day. I think a lot of people will have like a last meal and eat all the gluten-y things and say goodbye to it for the rest of their lives, but I was just like, nope, I don't want it. If it makes me feel this crappy, I'm done with it. Yeah, so I cut it out, and then fast forward a year later, I finally got a family doctor, which was so amazing. So I went in, and you know, you have that first appointment where you give them all your medical history and stuff, and I told him I had celiac disease, and he was like, oh, did you get a biopsy? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, obviously you need a biopsy to know for sure. And so he recommended that I get one. But the trick is, the catch is that because I had been gluten-free for a year already, I would have to start eating gluten again for 6 weeks leading up to this biopsy to make sure that the results were accurate. Because if the idea is, if you have been gluten-free for a year and your intestines have started to heal themselves, and they go in there and look around and they don't see any damage, you could get like a false negative. Is that how that, like an inaccurate result, basically. So you have to be eating gluten and actively damaging your intestines so that they can see the damage when they go in through the biopsy. Yeah, I was really not sure. I was like, I remember how shitty I felt when I was eating gluten, and I don't think I want to do that again. But he was good. My family doctor was really good, really supportive of me, like making my own choice. He was like, listen, I'll put you on the wait list for a biopsy because it takes a while to get those appointments, and you can think about it, and if you get the call and you really don't want to do it, you can just say no. So I was like, okay, that's a good compromise. So I went away and did my own research, and I found this amazing podcast called The Gluten-Free RN. I think it's by Nadine Grzeskowiak. I think I'm saying her name right. Anyways, it's an amazing podcast. If you have celiac disease, if you know someone with celiac disease, such a good resource. I'll link it in the description box as well. But yeah, she has a whole episode on whether or not you should do a gluten challenge, which is basically what they call it when you start eating gluten again for a biopsy. And her advice was basically no, absolutely. Like, why? Why would you do that? She was just like, logically, what do you have to gain from damaging your organs on purpose just to prove that you have celiac disease? If you know that you feel better on a gluten-free diet, which I did, and like you know that eating gluten makes you feel like crap, which it did, there's no point. Like, you're done. There's no point, because the risks like far outweigh the reward kind of thing. Like, if you start eating gluten again and you start damaging yourself again, you can increase your risk of cancer and like getting other autoimmune diseases. She was like, no, it just doesn't make sense. And that's kind of how I had been feeling as well. After a year on the gluten-free diet, I was by no means cured. I was not better, all the way better, but I was improving for sure. I was still bloated 24/7. My poop was still not good, but the brain fog had lifted. I could remember things again, and I could just see that I was getting better finally. I just like knew that it was going in the right direction, and I remembered how shitty I felt before, and I was just like, I don't want to go back there. So I made the decision to not get the biopsy. In the podcast episode that I listened to, she kind of mentions that there is also genetic testing that you can get done because it is a hereditary disease. I assume that test is expensive, but maybe at some point in the future, like if I'm gonna have a kid or something and I want to like make sure I'm not gonna pass it on to my kid, or you know what I mean, like maybe in that situation I would get a test. But for now, I feel like based off the first doctor that I saw telling me I had celiac disease and the extreme reactions I have when I do eat gluten, I feel like I can say that I have it. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like a bit of an imposter sometimes. I feel like because I didn't get the biopsy, I can't say that I have celiac disease and like I'm cheating. But just the smallest trace amounts of gluten, like I'm not saying when I eat gluten I feel bad as in when I eat a piece of bread I feel like, I mean when I inadvertently ingest a crumb of something or the tiniest trace amount and I'm not even aware that it's in my food, I don't even know it's there, I get really, really sick. I'm out for like a week minimum, and the mental effects last longer than a week. Yeah, I feel like a bit of an imposter. Like I'm not legit, but I don't know. That one doctor said I had it, so who am I to argue? Yeah, so I guess we'll leave it at that. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was not super boring, and yeah, I hope you're enjoying these. I will see you next time for the last video in this series, which is going to be about the recovery process. And if you thought this video was rambly, get ready. Hold on to your hats, because the recovery process has been a roller coaster and it was a huge learning experience and it was just all over the place. But yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about next time. So thanks for watching. Bye!